Anthony Bell, welcome to the Both Sides podcast.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
Mate, the reason we started this podcast was because I wanted to get close proximity to people like yourself who are the top 1% in their field and their endeavour. And it was such a great opportunity when I was connected with Josh, and Josh was like, mate, you've got to meet Anthony. He's transformed, I guess, part of the Australian accounting space. And I thought, what a better opportunity than to have you on the podcast and just unpack, mate, like, when I went through your rap sheet, I was blown away with actually what you've been able to achieve. And it's such an inspiration to people our age that are up and comers that desire success and want to create a life by design. And so today, mate, I just want to welcome you onto the podcast, thanks for the hospitality. And I don't know if you can feel, but I've got
we're pumped.
We're pumped. And Josh is jumping on board. Kev's over in Europe. So hopefully we can unpack and really get deep into what creates success, but also understand maybe a bit about who you are as a person too, mate. So
fantastic, guys.
Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to our podcast with the Bell Partners too, mate. It's only brand new, so this is pretty much the first one that's ever been done in here.
Yeah, right. It's good.
Great.
Mate, I'll just kick it off out of curiosity. My first question to you, Ant, is was there a moment where you realised you were wired differently?
Yeah, look, I think there was, and it was probably where I had to start taking responsibility for myself. School for me was an enjoyable time. I got on great with the other students. I got on great with the teachers. I was really interested in the sports programs at the school. Probably not as interested in the scholastic programs. But the sense of achievement was always, making first 15 at school or making the swim team and then trying to, see if you could actually win the races was always, sort of on my set there. And then I sort of, the scholastic part didn't really come on till a little bit after. In fact, it came on after the first set of school. And I had this desire to achieve. I was slow out of the blocks, so I actually had to go back and do the HSC a second time. So I went back and did year 13. And that's probably that turning point for me. And the bottom line, why did I do it? I did it because I didn't do that great in the first HSC. I then came in and saw my father. Mum and dad split when I was 2, so I grew up a mum. I'm a massive mummy's boy. And I knew things must have been bad when we got the HSC results. Back then it was by the mail. It wasn't online. And I got in. Mum and I stood with the postie. It came out in January, the year after the HSC. Mum and I were waiting for the postie. I put in for everything, medicine. I put in for law, commerce, everything, and I got into nothing. And I knew things must have been bad when Mum said, "Listen, you better go see your father." So I got on the bus, went and saw Dad. He was an accountant. This was 1988. He was an accountant and had a relatively successful practice, not a big firm, probably 5 or 6 staff really. But Dad was quite an entrepreneurial guy, so he was into restaurants and he was into outside investments outside the accounting profession. And Dad was just a hard marker. Went and met with him, and he basically said, "You're no good to me, unqualified." He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I was actually thinking of becoming an accountant." I think I started thinking about becoming an accountant on the bus on the way to Dad's firm. I had no intention of being an accountant before that, but I really had no other options. And if that didn't work, I probably would have been a school teacher or joined the police force or gone to the army or something like that. And I saw Dad's firm. He said, "Well," he sort of threw the challenge out. Said, "Look, you're no good to me, unqualified. So you've got to get into a university where you can do a Bachelor of Commerce or a Bachelor of Business with a major in accountancy. Then you can become a chartered accountant, and that's the only way this works." And so having a consequence was really early. I mean, I said, "So is that the only way it works, Dad?" I even said to him, "You must know somebody you can call and just get me into a uni." He said, "Mate, that's over. That can't happen anymore. You've got to go and do it the hard way." So then at year 13, probably starting to take a bit of responsibility, but I had a focus, I had a goal, and that's probably where it started for me to be really goal-orientated. I had a goal to make the first 15 as well, but that was more of a fun goal. This was a goal. So it's sort of, I'm a massive reader of literature. I love the All Blacks saying, sort of vision, a vision statement, followed by an action plan is really important. A vision statement with no action plan is a dream, but an action plan, taking action without a vision is an absolute nightmare. And so same issue sort of played out for me when I was a 17 or 18-year-old kid. And so my goal was, great, I've got to pass the HSC to do that. I then have to get into a commerce degree. I then have to pass that to get a job with Dad. And start to then become a chartered accountant. So that was kind of where it started for me. And it was, I guess boys at that age are fun, you start getting interested in girls, playing rugby union. It's a good, great life surfing, doing all that sort of stuff. But back then too, I remember the recession was on, interest rates were really high. My mum couldn't afford to keep me. She made that really clear. She said, I can't, you've got to get a job or something and got to bring in board and you've got to bring in rent. I've budgeted for you till you're 17 years old or till when you finish year 12. So then suddenly I was doing this study, I was working at Woolies as well, as a checkout chick, because where I got staff member of the month 3 or 4 times.
High achiever.
I was the only guy in an apron, and but we just needed the job, and because Mum said you have to, you start paying $50 a week board. So the accountability started then. Dan, is what I'm trying to say. And then the goal orientation and a real zest for doing something. And I don't think I was ever chasing the money, guys. I was really chasing a sense of achievement. I was chasing, to do that, to beat that. And then when I started working for Dad in the early part, it was really difficult. But likewise too, I started thinking, man, this industry is ready to take on. It was staid. It was very traditional. Accountants by their nature, back then and still today, generally record history, but they don't make history. They do a balance sheet or a profit and loss or a tax return. It's something in the past. But they don't really get into advisory or entrepreneurship of something in the future. So I was at that at a really young age, going, that's going to be the change in this profession. And, egotistically or over-edgingly, I wanted to be the guy who did that and change the face of accounting in Australia. I was all about doing that. It was a massive, lofty goal, but I wanted it straight away.
You were mentioning about the accountability piece came when you obviously turned from school to becoming a man, so to speak. Where do you think the vision, like the drive to succeed came from?
Yeah, so the one uni I got into, after I really applied myself, I only got into one uni when, again, waiting for the postie to come. Mum and I go, deja vu, we've been here before. But I was actually really nervous because I'd given it everything I had. And I got into one uni. I got into Charles Sturt University at Wagga Wagga. And I remember it was a Bachelor of Business degree. It was on Dad's list as a qualified chartered accountants university. And I remember just being elated. And I remember saying to Mum, I got into Wagga. I go, it's always like about, where's Wagga?
There's no beaches in Wagga.
Yeah, no, there was none, Josh. But it's funny, I got down there, but that was a real good shot for me because I had a bit of growing up to do. All the kids that were doing the commerce degree down there, it was on the land, obviously, in the Riverina. So all of the guys doing commerce degrees, most of them were on farms, and their fathers had literally let their kids go to do a business degree, which means they were hands short on the farms. And they were told by their dads who are, in grain or in cattle, if you fail and you don't make this work, I'm dragging you back into work. Right? So they had to pass. Otherwise, it was back onto the farm that they were trying to get off. So I was surrounded by people who had to pass. We had dorm fees to pay. You had to pay your dorm fees. Every second Thursday. Otherwise, you were thrown off campus. So I had to get a job down there as well, to help pay for that. I ended up being a bouncer at the university, which is a whole nother story. I got good at it. I did it all the way through. The first couple of sessions didn't go so well for me. But once I got good at it, again, that was just part of even what you bring to business. And, the security guards and bouncing is actually more of a psychology job than it is being tough or strong or strong-arming someone. It's just working someone into a position to make them want to leave if they had to leave. And so, we did all that through uni, had a lot of great times. And then I'd work for Dad in my weeks off. Because it was at Wagga Wagga, you had about 26 weeks on a year and you had 26 weeks off. So my 26 weeks off, I was working in Dad's company, learning about what I was studying, which is a real plus. So by the time I came out and I was done, I was a bit further ahead in the practical application of the work.
I can relate to that when I did my commerce finance degree. I was working in lending alongside it, so you're kind of getting...
So powerful, right?
Yeah, like you can... Because often you'll go to uni and you'll learn theory, but you don't... then you forget about it.
Yeah, and like I'd say to anyone, if you can learn your craft and actually put it into practical, what's happening at theory of a night time, and then take it to practical in a day, you'll advance on a 2x multiple faster than anyone who's just doing theory for 3 years and then starting practical after that.
So where does the story go to from university, half with Dad, half studying, to owning 2 black yachts and private jets and 100
and a great office location.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
What's the secret to success?
I think there's a balance. And lately, there's a great book that I've been sort of reading lately. It's titled, I'm a stage of life. I've just gone past 50, and years of age, and I sort of the meaning of wealth creation. We've been in wealth creation since I was a kid. Trying to help our clients get wealthier, drive their businesses better, so they make a profit. A better profit, then work on cash flow. But then the secret sauce was always go, well, okay, what are we doing with that? How are we setting up lifestyle arrangements? And there's a great book that's been written called Die with Zero. My elderly clients love listening to it. It's called Die with Zero. Yeah, it's written by a guy called Bill Perkins in America, and he basically was a fund manager. And it really heightens to a lot of people about what are we saving for? What is it all about? Do you want to be the richest person in the cemetery? Or do you want to have finding that balance between the life experiences that your hard work, you do it? And I was always like this. I've preached for years. I said, just reward yourself for your hard work. Don't be afraid to give yourself the things. Any businessman, any entrepreneur, any even person that's working as an employee, if they have a good year and they get a bonus, make sure that you reward yourself. For your hard work, because that'll bring you back when the alarm clock goes off at 5:30 the next morning to get up and do it again. Okay, so I'm big on that one, but it's finding the right, the temperature to where do you over reward yourself? And we've seen plenty of guys do that, particularly in the property industry, and finding that balance. So we go to work. We go to work to live, for sure. You make your work, sort of in my view, and this was given to me by the great David Leckie. I managed to get a lunch with him when I was just a kid, and I was trying to build Bell Partners. I'll take you through that in a sec, but we started Bell Partners in October 1997. I was looking for any information. I broke away from Dad's firm and I started it. Which was a very unpopular move with my father at the time. And then in I'm going to say it was about November 97, a mate of mine arranged, I said, get me somebody who's a really good businessman. I want to listen to him about running your own business. And this guy said, one of the best is Kerry Packer's MD's, David Leckie. And he said to me, I remember him standing there, he said, look, mate, I'll give you a last piece of advice. He goes, show me a great company and I'll show you a CEO whose work is their recreation. And I remember going, okay, it stuck with me all the way through. How do 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day at the office, how do you make it interesting? How do you make it enjoyable for the principals? We've got scars on us, we've got to deal with banks, we've got to deal with recruitment, retention, everything that comes with it. So how do you actually have a great experience every day? So your work becomes your recreation. So you're not going home dogged of a night time going, I hate my job and I do it for money. The real answer, if you can get to the right place, is say, I do it for the achievement. Money's a byproduct. I've got no problem with people doing really well with what they set out to, because I think it's a measurement tool and it's important to have it. Plus, I've never seen anyone get really rich and not help a lot of people along the way. Give people jobs, to be able to spend money on guys on whatever that knocks on to other parts. So I don't think anyone should be ashamed of doing well, especially in this country. But it's just finding that right place. So what your dreams are, I suppose, are linked to success. They're linked to a sense of achievement. And then you kind of, if I come back to, a lot of that stuff that I learned in the Bill Perkins book, Die with Zero, is finding the experiences in life that you have, balancing it. If you've got kids, try and give them their inheritance early so you can watch it, rather than having your kids sort of waiting around for you to die. So they
just waiting around with their hands out.
So that was it. The pathway started for me early. I worked in Dad's firm, was getting good now. I was at the Administrative Appeals Tribunal when I was 21, and I won a tax case for what was then my first client. She was a Miss Australia model, and the Australian Tax Office had said no to a claim on all of her fitness costs, all of her hairdressing, her grooming. They said no to it. And I remember she brought it to me. I said, no, I think I can take this on. So here I was at 21 years old, filed an objection, ended up at the Administrative Appeals Tribunal in front of 3 masters. And at 21, proved that it was a deductible expense for a person who's a model to actually, like I said, everything from running shoes to their fitness and, so on. And I then started to think, I'm good at this. I'm kind of good at it. I can put it in terms that people understand. And that was a really important part, that in communications, particularly in our game, you've got to speak in languages that people can understand. Okay, lawyers, accountants, they're well known around the world for making things so complex. That means the client, you lose the meeting if a client's sitting there going, look, I have no idea what they said. It sounded pretty good, but I've got no idea. I go, no, the real transfer of information is to get your clients on board with it, particularly if it's on a strategy to grow their business. So they drive out of there going, I know exactly where I'm at. Answer on the other side of it, sort of coaching me and driving me on that performance. And then ultimately, then you can talk straight English, sort of in achieving it rather than having, two parts out. So, yeah, we work large on I don't know if we invented it in here, but we call it the chameleon factor. You change your colours to the client that you're with, okay? You've got a highly adaptive client, you be highly adaptive. You've got a highly conservative client, and you be highly conservative. You work with, we're in the people business, all of us are. So there was a big part of me who said, to make this place hum, I had some plans to, Dad and I ran in, as I mentioned before, we parted company in 1997. Dad thought I was a raving idiot for wanting to start my own accounting firm. I was his practice manager, up to about sort of 9 or 10 staff. We're going pretty well. It had some challenging times. Dad was very entrepreneurial, so he wasn't really in the business, whereas I was. I was a junkie for it. I loved it. So I'd get up, I'd be in here at 7 o'clock, I'd go through till 10 o'clock. And even to this day, this is my mainstay. I'm still a junkie for advisory and consulting. We have a whole management team who runs the firm, but something tough comes up. I want to be in the advisory side of the business. What I love, it's probably what I'm best at. And then Dad and I just conflicted on it. He offered me a junior partnership, which was a great retention device in the 90s. Son, I've been thinking about this. I'm going to make you a junior partner. I'm going to think about it. Okay, what does that look like? Dad goes, well, I'll be the senior partner and you'll be the junior partner. And I go, right, and how long does that go for? And Dad goes, well, it goes till either I die or I retire. And Dad at the time was like 65 years old, and he's not retiring anytime soon. And I remember thinking, no, I want to do it my way. I also thought Dad and I were going to clash, and that was a really important thing to go, well, sometimes ideas in partnerships might seem great over a coffee or over a table. It's really the personality touches, and you've got to look into the future, go, will this partnership last? Like, will everybody bring certain skills to it that aren't going to piss anyone off, or someone's going to go slow on it and that? And you've got to try and make that call early. And I had the view that I'd seen so many accounting firm partnerships break up. Like it still happens now. Accounting firms and lawyer firms, an average partnership lasts for about 4 or 5 years before there's some reconstruction of it. And I didn't want to do that. I just want to I had this idea to run a corporate modelled accounting firm and break away, and that's when I started Bell Partners. So I went to Dad and I said, look, mate, thanks for your kind offer. I'm going to go and do it alone. And Dad thought I was a raving idiot. He and I are actually in competition with each other from the start. But one thing I'm proud of, and it's one thing, you guys cop a lot of it too, I can't stand people who steal IP or steal clients. So, when I left Dad, I shook his hand, I looked him in the eye and I said, mate, rest assured, I'm not going to touch one of your clients. And I remember Dad's clients then, I was a practice manager, so I was sort of the young guy coming through and they liked it. So I was attached to all of them. And within a week of leaving, almost all of them called me, my Dad's clients, and said, look, we want to come with you. And I remember just saying, look, I'm not taking it. And then I remember saying, my dad's actually a good accountant, you should stay with him. They said, well, we're going to leave him anyway now that you're not there, the youth is not there, we're going to leave him anyway. I said, well, I don't recommend that you do that, but if you do, I'm still not taking you anyway. And we're strong in that loyalty factor. Then 3 years later, Dad and I was in competition. Basically, it's still the worst deal I've ever done in my whole life. The old man calls up. Dad said he wanted to have lunch to solve this. He said, right, you've survived. I can't believe you've survived for 3 years. A few things in life shocked me, but Dad goes, it shocked me that you're actually still going. And my PA, Jacqueline, who started with me in 97, is still my PA today.
Wow.
Wow.
Jacko, right? And a lot of people say that, you get less than that for murder. So 27 years on the job there. And we were going, and Dad, we had lunch. Dad's favourite place was at the A&A. And I remember Dad goes, okay, I've come up with what's going to happen here. Right, you want to run your own show, right? He said, what I'm going to do is you're going to buy me out and I'm going to come work for you, right? You're going to buy out Donald Bell & Co., which was Dad's firm. I was called Bell Partners then. I'm going to come work for you. And I said, all right, what will we do about valuation? Dad goes, mate, we'll just give it to an independent valuer and whatever they say, we'll shake hands, we'll agree on that. The independent valuation came back. I thought it was a little bit high. Dad thought it was a bit low, so Dad started negotiating on that one again. As I said, it's still the worst. It's the worst best deal I've ever done because I think I paid like a 32 times multiple, right, of Dad's.
Wow.
And his accounting firm was definitely, and I know why it got me, because he goes, mate, the end is near for me, so I'll get him to buy it. But what it did was avoid the distraction between Dad and I, and it brought a father and a son back together, and then we had 15 great years. You know, my old man was a really good advisor. I was young, so he gave me a bit of like agent experience, and if there was a blue at the tax office, we used to send Dad, and he used to love it and get tearing and stuff like that. And he worked all the way up to with the firm until when he passed away, a few years ago. And so, yeah, it was an interesting sort of set. But that also too, my model was different. Like I backed myself. I remember even this building, our marquee client back in the 90s, the one who basically taught me a lot, not just about real estate, but about business, was John McGrath. So,
still your client.
Yeah, Johnny's still with us today. So it's like a 30-odd year relationship. And I remember, like I said, he taught us a lot about business because it was weird. I remember it was funny, about 1999, we've been doing John's stuff, and McGrath's was, like I said, it was a mainstay of businesses. John had been on 60 Minutes, right? It was like covered on everything as the new way of doing business. And a lot of the things that he set up, the EBU system, the contractor system, is still across the industry. And I can still remember him saying to me, a guy called Bill Maloof, who was a heavyweight down in Double Bay. Bill called me up. He was LJ Hook, who was in the captain's club. He goes, right, I've checked around, checked you out. You're going to do my accounting. And I said, look, Bill, I have to go check with John McGrath, if that's okay, because he's kind of my only real estate client, and I'm entrenched now. I want to get his permission, to take you on. Bill goes, what? He goes, John McGrath. He said, mate, I was in real estate before that bloke was. It's not a popularity contest, right? And then I went to John, and I remember it was great leadership. I expected John to say, no, you're my guy, and I don't want you working for any other competitors. John goes, Billy, I think this is a great idea. He said, obviously you won't trade secrets, or you won't get involved in recruitment. Do you know what I mean, sort of nicking my staff to go to anyone else's? I said, no, I'd never do that. John goes, then go and do it, because the more you learn and the wider you get, the better you're going to be for me when I need help, do you know what I mean, sort of on strategy and stuff like that. And so that then started our retention stuff. So, yeah, McGrath, Bill's still a client today. So that long-term relationships, do you know what I mean, sort of is probably the cornerstone of our place. They're all, we try and keep clients for life. We always say at the start, even if people who signed us up yesterday, we say, hey, what our goal is to retire with you. We know we have to be good at our job to keep you appointing us every year. We have to get better every year. In Australia, average time of duration of an accounting relationship is 2.5 to 4 years. Macquarie Bank wrote that up a couple of years ago in a book called The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. So I go, no, we've got to break that record, right? No one wants a 2.5 or 4 year client. But if clients are itchy and they're moving, it tells you it's not the client's fault. It's actually the accountant's not providing them with innovation. It's almost where the client's saying, look, you know what, I've seen the best of these guys. They haven't given me anything new in the last 3 years, so I'm going to go and try someone for fresh. I go, no, we've got to get fresher every year. So our self-education is really, really high here on that.
Got just a good question, Belly, too. I think I've heard you say somewhere too that if you lose a client, you personally call them.
100%.
And I think you famously said somewhere, like if you lose $300 on a tax return, it hits you just as bad as losing a multi-million dollar. Yeah, worst day. Don't talk to Belly.
Everyone here goes on no, because and there was literally a day a couple of weeks ago where we signed like a $400,000 deal. It was a cracking, big job for us, and and that's right at the top of our marquee clients. And we lost a $600 tax return because someone moved, to Western Australia, and we didn't have a firm there. They said they want a local accountant, and I was just gutted by it. Yeah, you got to be kidding. We're in the Zoom age, right? And so the guys will even go further. It goes in. So we have a thing called preventable losses in the firm. Not that dissimilar to what you guys have in property management. The rules on our preventable losses, the guys, it's brain damage to them. They go, and considers even if someone dies, that is still not acceptable reason to lose a client, because you should get the estate, right? And you should get and all the parties that come with it. But on a serious note, I suppose there's an important part in that, guys, because Josh, the thing is, I was happy to borrow money, and I talk a lot, to my clients. I should talk to you guys about it too, about the difference between good debt and bad debt.
Totally.
And I looked at backing myself as being good debt. Right? I leveraged myself. I mean, we came and bought this building in 2003. Like, we only had like 15 staff when we bought it. It's the same building that I bought in 2003, and it's set up for 90. And I remember I just wanted it. I go, man, it's cornerstone. I'm going to take accounting to retail. It's different. Most accounting firms are at level 47 of some building. It's hard for their clients to get to. They've got to drive into the city and get clogged. They've got to park their car somewhere. Then they've got to go up elevators and escalators. They go, what if we just do retail? And the concierge, they just get in and park them on that side. So, I looked at it, and it was multiplex, and I looked at I can build my whole company off the back of this. As I said, it had 90 spots in it, and we only had 15 staff, but I signed a contract. And I did a structured deal with multis. They were great. They let me back end everything. Yeah. And then I thought, okay, I've still got to fill it. I'll service it with, I'll bring some mates in. They'll pay us some desk rent. And it was almost like WeWork back in 2003. I had all my mates. I had a lawyer mate who was just starting out. Some great PR guys were in the place going. We had a mortgage broker. So suddenly we were running like a service office desk, and that's how I was meeting my commitments to pay the desk. And as we got bigger as accounting firm, we slowly took those parts back. All the guys moved on and went somewhere. So, that good debt versus bad debt is a big part. But I do look at a lot of client advisory and go, mate, you've got bad debt here. You've got debt that has not secured. There's no security under it. Good debt is at least having a $3 million building. Yes, it might be hard to fund it because you're not full on, but at least you've got an asset at the end of the day which should be growing.
Yep.
So that's good debt. When I see guys go, I'm borrowing $3 million to just buy IP, I go, far out. If it goes wrong, you're going to have the debt, but you won't have the asset.
All right, right. So quick break, but I think the question I was going to lead in with was sort of debt versus vision. So I guess for yourself, and this is a question for myself and other listeners.
Yeah.
You're new in business, you've come across this beautiful office, it can hold 90, you had, I think, 15 staff. Yeah. You're talking about good debt versus bad debt. Now, a lot of people in business go down the road of bad debt, big, new, shiny, think they're buying the right thing when it's in essence the wrong thing. What are some framework and a thought process, I guess, for people in business to seek out that advice, and how should they be looking at opportunities new in business? So obviously you saw the vision, you were happy to go into debt because you understood what the outcome could be.
Yeah.
Just explain for the listeners how they can approach these scenarios, who they should seek out, and how they should go about that.
Josh, I think the first place to go to when making those decisions is go back to cash, okay? Sometimes debt is usually a big capital asset, so it's got all sorts of parts of IP in it. It might have, property backing it, particularly the business itself. My first place to go to is what's the cash flow around it. So one is what's the cost of the finance? Okay, the debt, it's easy to work out. It's the simplest thing to work out, the interest rate times the capital amount. Then is where the tricky part starts to go, right, how do I leverage that debt? I mean, sort of into actually performing well above, not just above my interest covenants, but well above. Because you also got to be in fact that when people make a decision about a business, they sometimes look at it and go, look, this will be a good business. This should work, right? I go always straight to a draft P&L on anything, even if it's a short term, an SPV, something's quick. I go, show me what it can make, bottom line up, and I'm looking for margin straight away. Now, okay, let's talk about a petrol station operator. 1% profit to turnover, all right? So they're investing big, they're going into plant, service, equipment, they've got high risks on whether or not, another competitor comes up and their risk is down to a 1% profit to the total revenue, right? So it's a really hard business to get excited about. Or then you go into other streams of business, real estate for argument, it's got to have a minimum of 20 to 24% profit turn. So I then go to the actual cash that it can produce, and the debt becomes just an anagram of that cash to make a decision and drive it. But I do a lot of reverse modelling, so I look and go, this is where it should be on benchmark. The debt is a factor, you can't get away from it. And then I'm looking, though, for people to live well still inside the business, rather than that, I'm going to have to slog it out for 10 years and then I'm finally going to come good. Okay, mate, that doesn't make sense at all. People who budget to make a loss in the first couple of years invariably achieve it. So I go, there's no budgeting to make a loss at all. Right? You budget to make a profit, and then you go about it. And then the third limb on that one is going, right, we've got a paper profit, show me cash flow. Show me the ability to get cash out of this business. And that's the last part. So on paper sometimes, it looks really profitable, get tied up with debtors, get tied up with creditors, get tied up with slow payments, slow contracts. And even though on paper it looks all right, sort of the business has got the owners around the throat because they can't get any cash out. So, again, my stock standard model is you haven't truly been paid till you've written a cheque out of the business to the partners or to yourself. So can the business regenerate cash flow and take it out? So I actually put the profit a lot into an expense of the business, just like salaries and wages. If salaries and wages per month for 200 grand and profit's meant to be 150, I then go, well, the business has got to pay out 350. It's got to pay the profit to the owners.
Yep.
That was the model I used, Josh, to try and prove the business vision correct. Okay, because again, the vision statement can sometimes get a bit, it gets grubby, and the longer the term, the less hardcore stuff it was. Before we started the potty today, remember I was speaking to you guys about we run 52 management sessions, 52 weekly management sessions. So we don't run monthly meetings, we run weekly meetings on everything. I say win the week, then you go into winning week 2, test it. If you lose the month, you've then got to come back and try and win the following month. If you're already too far gone, lose the week, you can win back the following week before it gets too far away from you. So likewise too on that vision statement, you definitely got to look at the business and go, aside from all the great rainbows and butterfly parts of it and the fact that it will make sense, I come back to, can it make cash, right? And can it flow out of the business to the owners to be able to pay back the debt?
I've got another question for you. Can I ask you a live example? Of
course.
Because it'd be great to get context from you. So I guess we use my business as an example, and I'd say the first part of the question is would staff be considered debt if they bring in revenue? That's one part. Second part is, and again, a live example, I've just stepped off the tools. I was writing $4 million, so I've just pulled that out of the business, which was a hard thing to swallow.
Yeah.
But we've always been a cash-based business. We've never had debt in the business. That was just our choice. I don't know if that was the right thing or the wrong thing, but now we're in a position where we've bought our office space, paid it down. You've got 35 staff. It's generating net income, so it's a good cash producing asset. In our position now, would it be the right assessment to look at it's healthy to go into debt to expand? We've got 35 staff. We'd like to go to 75, 80. We'd like to acquire, a couple of other buildings. What should my next move be, I guess, in this scenario in terms of looking at really good debt? I've got a really strong appetite for debt now because I've got a strong liquidity position. And I was just fortunate to build a good, strong enough business with a bit of money behind me, but I understand that's not the case for everybody. I guess where we are at the moment, where should I be looking at debt and how should I be leveraging debt to, I guess, accelerate the business, replace myself?
Yeah.
And what are the avenues I should take?
So on the back of an envelope, I'd say go to debt under underlying assets. So buy buildings, okay? Try and think like this. We're going to be paying rent anyway. And I've always done a simple model. I did it when I bought this place. How much rent am I paying to a landlord now? How do I'm just going to take, that's my starting point. I'm taking that amount of rent. I'm saying how much does that interest that capitalises out to a dollar amount, and then I go and buy the building to equal. So I'm no worse off.
Perfect.
I start with being absolutely no worse off between paying dead money to a landlord. Say if it was $300,000 and you were, someone's paying rent, I go, wow, that buys a lot of money right now. That $300,000 buys about $4.5 million worth of interest. That's the value of the site you're in. Convert it to something you own. At the very worst, you're no worse off. But then the second play is to go, hang on, I'm making money while I sleep, because while I'm paying a service that otherwise paid, the property is moving up while I sleep as well. Hidden form of wealth creation. You'd be shocked, Josh, how many people don't get into that. Then I get the second part and I go, mate, you're a good operator, mate. Well reputed around the country. Your business is really well known. I go, then I want to make, you said you want to move from 40 staff to maybe 75. I would be leveraging your brand like never before. I'd be trying to go, how do I go on a recruitment mission that actually costs me nothing to drive in? I use my brand and I turn the leverage of my brand into the magnet for recruitment.
Totally.
And therefore, you're building an EBU style business that fundamentally the great work you've done over many, many years to get your brand to where it is. I go, let's not go buy businesses to fit into Hive. Mate, let's use Hive to actually attract them, like inbound recruitment.
That's right.
And suddenly you're at 75 staff, you go, wow, look at these guys. It's just chopping straight to my bottom line. And I've got nothing to fund on it.
It
always drives me nuts when guys go, I want to buy a rip roll. It's, it's not going that well. It's making 12%. I go, 12%, you're going to be paying 6.5% interest on it. Not worth it. Rent rolls have to be making 20%. That's debt. I mean, there's got to be something in it for the owner, is my point.
Totally.
Otherwise, you're just going and trying to build a business. sure, anyone can take money, borrow money from a bank and go and buy a business, but the real question is how does the business perform to pay back that debt?
Yep.
And so, mate, for you, that's what I'd be doing. So straight off the back of it, I'm not even going to charge you for that advice.
Well, I just made an offer on a building yesterday, so we're on the same page.
It's the right
It's really good.
Mate. So
it's good.
Go to capital assets and then use the rest of your IP to drag people in to fund the business of the place you're going to go in.
Did you do that with Bell Partners?
Yeah, we sort of did, mate. I knew that I had big shoes to fill. As I said, we bought this building in 2003. I did 100% finance on it when I bought it.
100?
I got 100% finance. The guys I negotiated with Maltese who were awesome to deal with. They exchanged literally, do you know what I mean, sort of no deposit. They funded my fit out, which meant that I was going to get a fit out in this building on the core. And I had a couple of years to actually get ready for it. And again, I used the same number that I was paying in rent elsewhere to go, what's that get me? Oh my God, it got me this building. Now, if I go back, sort of 2003, now 20 years plus, we paid our rent, which is in the interest. We paid the building off, but it goes up every year in commercial property rates. And remember, I came here before it was Barangaroo, but I knew something was going on well down. I looked at the property market. As I said, I was working with John. John actually suggested, he goes, mate, you should buy down in this new place called King Street Wharf. And it was a Patrick Stevedores. It was a hole in the ground when it was shown to me by John's project marketing guy.
Wow.
I'm going, wow, could this be Sydney's next white elephant? Like it's just it used to be like a container depot, but then I looked at it in the water. I could see Darling Harbour was starting to happen. I didn't know what was happening up north there to where now Crown is, and it's this amazing sound. I go, something's going to happen there. But at the end of the day, I came back to that same rule, Josh. I go, I'm already paying this dead money at level 23 of, a 70-story building. I'm just going to convert what that rental was, and I'm going to go, how much does that buy me in capital? And it was enough to buy me this. And so, and then I came down here, 15 staff. We built 90 seats. So I had broad ambitions, but that drove me. Like the size of it drove me. I go, right, I got to grow my firm. I got to get more clients, recruit more people. Our business is a bit different to yours, where the firm's principals are the ones who have to bring in, the work, and then you actually try and attract staff to be able to conduct the work for you. And then we set about this, this awesome growth plan. Because I had big shoes to fill, but I knew that it was good debt. Coming back to the question, good debt versus bad. I knew that no matter what, the asset, while it was hard on the P&L because we had more spots that we were, we had more spots than we had staff to fill. I knew all I had to do was fill the staff, and now that was the same model I followed all around the country. So the Bell Partners now have 7. Great offices. They all look a bit like this. Brisbane, Melbourne, 2 in Sydney, Canberra. We're in Tamworth and Newcastle. And I use the same mentality over and over. If it works for you, don't change it, right? Follow the exact same plan.
How important is it for people to build wealth in parallel with the success of their business?
Yeah, I think it's omnipotent.
Yeah.
I don't, it bothers me sometimes when you go, someone says, "Oh man, I need a bit of help. My business is going really well, but I'm struggling." I go, I don't get that. Yeah. I go, universally, they're one and the same. So what aren't you doing outside of the business? Because at the end of it, a lot of businesses are just goodwill, they're brand names. They don't build battleships and they don't build cities, they just simply goodwill on it. So if you're not extrapolating value out of your business, then there's a fundamental problem with the business. All your lifestyle costs are beyond what, do you know what I mean, sort of your profit payments are, or conversely, you haven't found the balance right. But I'm sort of saying to guys, build. I know I've had a lot of great mentors that run it. Johnny Simons used to say to me all the time when he built Aussie Home Loans, I only own shares in one company, I profit re-inject, and I'm building Aussie, and that worked out perfectly for him. He played a beautiful businessman, beautiful guy. But the same token is that now in 2025, diversification outside of where you are is the risk coefficient of a really happy life, and being able to say, great, I'm backed up everywhere. If this all came to an end, I'm backed up elsewhere. So, like I said, a combination of what you're best at in business, but also to the residential place you live in. I'm a big believer in guys, have a crack and go, oh, mate, he drives a really nice car. I go, yeah, but that might be what he rewards his hard work with, that reminds him to keep going. So I've got no problem with leasing a good car if that's what turns you on. You know, so, but you've got to find those factors that remind you of what hard work looks like.
And create a recreational workplace. So
definitely too. Yeah, like I said, a real buzz on that. You know, the Chinese always used to say, live in interesting times. I then go, great, what is our culture like here? You know, do you want to hang out at the place? You know, do you walk in and go, God, you know, and our culture, like everything we watch, we aim for a 10 out of 10 culture. If it's running at a 6 or a 7, I feel it straight away, and we go and do some work on it immediately, to get it back up to 8 or 9. You know, you'll never get, sort of Wonderland culture, but if you're constantly pushing that, because that makes your retention a lot easier. People develop real friendships here, and we've got some staff here who've been here. Jacqueline said for 27 years. The company's 27 years old. Our longest staff member is 27 years, but then we've got a whole lot of 21 years. We've got a whole bunch of 15 years. It was a funny story actually with Jack. When she went past the 10-year, my PA, she went past the 10-year, and I was just so happy. Like, 10 years was a big thing. People used to get a gold watch or something. I remember I was stoked to actually have someone that actually stayed with me and was such a wonderful part of our growth. So I bought her a car. I bought the Mini Coopers had just come out. They were in the movie The Italian Job. And everyone wanted one. I go, I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to buy her a car, and I did. And it was this great night. We went down to my great mate and client, Steve Anastasia's place at China Doll. We got some of her best friends and her family there, and we handed her over the keys. It was awesome. Then about 2 years later, we're leading up to end of financial year party, and Jack goes, look, we've got a bit of an issue. I said, what is it? She goes, we've got 3 guys now going past their 10 years, and they want to know what the car policy is. So I go, all right, that was actually not the sensiblest thing to do. I just ran in and did it.
That's cool, though.
So what we did then is we changed it to Breitling watches. And we've now literally, so you get past 10 years, you get a watch, and it's a beautiful Swiss watch, and we've now given out literally about 30 of them.
Wow.
Which is not bad for a company of our size, yeah.
What makes a good business, Ant? Like, if you were to go back into my shoes, in your mid-20s, building an enterprise, knowing what you know now, what makes a good business?
It's funny, mate. My daughter, my second daughter, could sell anything. We play games and I tell her, sell me this bottle of water, and she can sit there. If I've got 1 minute to sell it to me, she goes, and she's really good at it. And now if she came to me and said, I want to get into real estate, I would probably say that what a wonderful industry to be in. It's just been the cornerstone of Australia in so many ways. You get to trade on people's shelter. Their biggest asset they're ever going to own is in the industry that you guys trade in. What a wonderful industry to be in. I would probably then go, wow, do you know what I mean? As I've seen it over 30 years evolve, I go, who are the smart, what's the new elevation there in real estate? It's probably in buyer's advocacy. You think about it, like sometimes I look at these guys that trusted relationships. You look at some of the guys that are world promoted, they get the exact same fee as a listing selling agent gets, but they're not sweeping up leaves before every single
less grenades.
No callbacks. Their prospecting is still on, but there's no callbacks. They get in and close and get equally paid. So I start to go, when I talk about, sort of real estate, we stop talking about hours and we start talking about outcomes, okay? And then, so, this is the age-old profession. If someone's 2% of a sale plus GST, and someone's going, wow, they sold the place in 1 week. I can't believe on a $10 million place I'm paying them $200,000. I go, forget about it. You got the outcome. Right? Don't get too fixated. But for the buyer's agent, that can even be faster than that. Do you know what I mean? No photography to do. Do you know what I mean? Sort of no callbacks. No, as I said. And so I'd probably say to her, I'd love you to go into real estate. I'd hope the old man would have a couple of tricks up his sleeve for you, and be able to guide you on it. But I think as the industry's evolved, looking at it, it's such a wonderful industry. And then the adjacents have come in. The guys who've mastered internal finance, now internal insurance. So it's almost selling a product to an already existing client that is also to a magnetic attachment to the next time they're going to be selling in 4 or 5 years. They're going, oh wow, I'm doing a Hive's insurance. I've got Hive insurance. I've got a Hive mortgage. I'm still in touch with the Hive guys. So it's only a natural thing that when I'm selling the house, I'll come back into that brand. So it's not completely easy to run the adjacents, but the guys who've done it really well have prospered all the way through. It's almost like a residual income coming off a rent roll, and they're using their relationships to simply sell them another service that they're already buying from somebody else.
kind of cross-pollinating and
Definitely. Yeah. And I said, and then, I mean, the biggest thing that goes with your industry, which I'm sort of, is always peculiar, and I remember doing some work. I got called over to Foxtons in 2004, 2005. As you guys both know, that the real brands in all of your employees or contractors, so called, kind of exist with them. They might work for the brand, but if they leave, they're almost going to take their whole database, they'll take their whole buying file, and they will simply open up at a competitor's place. And literally, it's one of the only industries in the world where the disruption is not that high, and they can almost make the exact same income running their own show under somebody else's brand. So I go, how do we, sort of work out the retention mechanisms that make people just stay in the brand? And those who master it, like your business has, Josh, somebody like McGrath's is great at it, Colossi's really good at it, Dave Hyland's really good at it. They create these life experiences where those guys, someone's always ringing up offering a better commission deal, right? On the 60-40 commission cut, someone is always going to offer 70-30 to that person, okay? They haven't got them and they're still ahead because 30% of something is better than 100% of nothing, right? On that said, but what makes that agent stay? They go, well, cool. We are combined between the two things of brand that I work for and my talent, and they are a higher elevation model that makes them magnetise and stay. So I think then the real thing there, it's not just about the money that guys make, it's now really becoming about the lifestyles in the business, the friends they make, the families that they sort of get close and tight. And the guys that really win it in real estate is creating an atmosphere, as exactly said, like a home that people come to. And it's like their recreation. And, they're well paid, but leaving is just not an option.
Hey, Belly, one thing I've noticed with you, mate, and we're going to talk afterwards about some things we've got going on, which we'd love to have you on board with, but your energy's electric. The passion, then I think, it's so rare. You are at the pinnacle of your field, and just in business, you're such a highly regarded businessman. You've got you've got your charity, you've got the other business subsidiaries, a few boats and a few things going on the side.
We'll talk about the boats.
We'll talk about the boats.
Yeah.
Mate, you are just at the tippy top of your field. Yet when you sit and you talk to you, and we're pitching our new business idea to you, you are just as hungry to be involved with it as we are.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
I think it comes from you've got to be made for it. You've got to want to assist. Okay, I'm in the service industry, and you've got to be really, really comfortable with being in that industry that you are serving someone. Okay, to be a part of it, to be on the train that you guys are creating, you've actually got to look at it and go, wow, it's an honour and a buzz to be on the ride with great operating people. But I know I'm not going to stay on the ride unless I'm really good at my craft, okay? I know that they might go, cool, we had a great first meeting and stuff like that, but unless you actually deliver value added and extrapolate at a higher level than what you're being paid, I know great operators won't keep you. They'll go, look, mate, he's a great guy, but, we run out of ideas, or we're looking for a bit more punch from him. So you've got to be really comfortable with having the pressure of constant innovation on you, okay? Constant education. Now, I get it. My black book, as it was, I get for my clients. Far more than I've learned at university or doing my ICAA exam. I've actually learned from great business cases that come in here. As we say to our guys, I'm into case studies. I'm into coming with a business. I don't mind if they come in and we've got to get our boxing gloves out and get these guys cracking. I'll take on the banks. I'll do whatever I've got to do. But the fact is, when an opportunity like you guys have comes along, you've got to be match fit, ready to take it that day. Okay. Now, to do that, you've all got to be practicing every single day your craft, so it comes in and clicks immediately. No point me coming to you guys saying, "Oh, look, you guys go, this is the industry, we're going to do it. We've got a vision for our plan. We're working action plan out. We've got to do it with banks." I'm saying, look, I don't know anything about what you guys do, but give me a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, and I'll go and try and find out about it. You're going to lose your customer very comfortably there. I think that in the second part, Josh, it's an interesting question. I'm very comfortable with dealing with other people's problems, right? So I like it. Like I said, some guys go, I don't want my clients' problems. They're on the phone to me, moaning or bitching or whatever like that, you know what I mean, about, what's wrong with it. And I go, yeah, but okay, ultimately, you failed in your job if your client's at that level, because you should have pre-seen that coming and you should have solved it for them before they got there. But if they ring you and they say, look, something's just happened, a plane's flown into the side of our building, you've got to be really comfortable in an advisory method of going, one, I've got high energy to help you solve this, and I'm going to get a buzz out of being part of the solution. But the second thing is I know I've got the experience to know what to do and how to do it. It's almost like a great surgeon, you know, constantly working on specific parts. So, you know, from my end, the knowledge base comes off lots and lots of work around particularly the real estate industry. As I said, we started in the 90s, and it's our biggest department here.
Yep.
So we've literally got 25 specialists who only do real estate agents, do you know what I mean? So we're just in the Sydney office alone. And they're very good. Like they're great at it, and they've grown up in it. And then the next part is the vision to be able to see into the future and see things before they happen. You can only get that from experience. Divert your client off, do you know what I mean? Sort of running over the cliff and drive them towards the things, do you know what I mean? Sort of they're going to make risk-free, coefficient and good income.
And mate, you know, if you look at your client base, you know, these guys historically been with you for so long, you know, and there's the mix of hunger, there's the mix of passion, but there is the mix of, you know, wanting to serve, and there's no ego with you, you know, and that's a huge trait, you know, to have what you have and to be, you know, so many people listening to this are aspiring to be a fraction of what you've achieved. And I think, you know, just above all else, the achievements, but just what's so admirable is that there's no ego and you're willing to teach. Like I watched your Eric talk. It was incredible. And I know that so many people out of that walked away just going, holy shit, like this guy's an accountant, but he's just a business freak. Like he just dropped a bunch of knowledge bombs and obviously a lot of real estate references in there. Yeah. And most of this audience are, you know, they're real estate based. But I was talking to people that came out of your chat were just like, the guy's an absolute weapon. And it was so relevant and key takeaways. And I think what I noticed, you know, especially in that Eric chat and some other, you know, media that I've heard you on, is that you do make it digestible. And I think it doesn't matter if you're like a seasoned businessman, say like myself, you know, I'm on the path to try to achieve what you've done, or someone who's just started in a month. They want someone they can trust. They want someone who knows that's in the trenches with them, because at the end of the day, like your accountant is with you lobbing grenades, and you're putting your financial that's your financial nest egg in the capable hands of that person. It gets such a big responsibility. Yeah, you know,
you're so right about it, Josh. I mean, it's the other side of that comes from that word that you said, getting in the trenches of your clients. Like, you know, we always have an attitude here. I said, you know, someone might be trying to come for our client, but they've got to get past us first, right? And then you imagine that trust word comes and goes, these guys are actually on my team. Like, what's happening to me seems like it's actually happening to them, and it matters so much to them, rather than just that, you know, oh, well, you've stuffed up here, and I guess, you know what I mean, this is, you really screwed this up. Okay, you know, thanks, Cluedo. Thanks for telling me I've screwed up. I'm here actually to get out of the hole, right? So, Jermaine, I think it is attitudinal to a certain extent. I think the part that you mentioned was really interesting. The Eric talk was an interesting part to us because, you know, I've been listening and watching, you know, this part. It's been a really interesting time. We picked the movements in COVID that property was going to accelerate, you know. So we were saying to our clients really, really early, I said, don't start following the thing of putting people off or panicking. I said, keep your teams together. The government will have a way of 4 people being able to go into an open house, staying 1.5 meters apart. But on the sense of it, having plugged into this, I go, wait, right, interest rates are dropping really fast. No one's going to be travelling. The government is pouring cash in through JobKeeper and JobSave. I go, the place that's going to happen, it's going to go off. I can pick it now because I've got these properties going to go through the roof. And suddenly it did. And then obviously, you know, great rides in COVID. Some people got caught with their pants down in COVID. It was just they thought the ride would go on so well and so long, and they didn't see the 13 interest rate hikes and what that would do. They weren't sharp on their P&Ls. They were just, you know, they're spending money like drunken sailors in an organisation. And then their profitability got affected in that 20, you know, sort of 23, 24 period. And then, you know, sort of now I go, okay, what's the next big thing? And I go, wow, okay. And I can remember still, I'm really interested in world economies and how that falls down. And I remember on the night, you know, I stayed up late to watch Bloomberg. I go, Trump's delivering on the 2nd of April, he's going to deliver this tariff speech. I go, I think that's going to be the next thing. Something big's happening here, it's coming. He talked about tariffs when he started in January. I've got a lot of information that comes to me on a daily basis. So we track everything. All of our clients' data comes in. So we're constantly seeing trends or seeing things that are going on. It's happening real time to us. And I just go, wow, okay, Trump's going to pull this off. And he bashed China. And then within an hour of it, I was going, so China's got all this stock that's meant to be going over to America. It's not going to go there anymore because of tariffs. They're going to dump it in Australia. That'll fix our cost of living crisis. Interest rates will start falling. I go, is it the thing that's going to kickstart the Australian economy? Days on market will drop again, from 62 days. It'll get back to sort of 30 days. And so I said, it's coming now, and it's already evident. So we called that really early in April, sort of on it.
It's pivotal.
Obviously, too, the 2 interest rate drops that have taken place already, particularly the last one in May, started the resurgence, but it's more coming. People will hold their jobs in Australia. People are fanatical about property. They just want to feel 2 things when they're buying a property. They feel, number one, am I going to keep my source of income? I tick that box. And 2, will interest rates be something that I can afford on this? And I'm seeing interest rates drop, so I go, I know how bad it is, time to buy. Right? And it's the Australian property market has been so favourable on investment growth since 1950. Every 10 years it's doubled itself collectively. It's one of the safest bets in Australian investment. And right now, and I do get that whole issue with, are we getting so expensive to live in Australia? But I go, but what about the opportunities to get out there and get a job and make more money and buy a property? That's still there too. I bought my first property. I keep hearing these stories about these poor 20-year-olds who are never going to own a property. I go, well, I know what they're going to do. They're going to wait till mum and dad die, and they're going to cash in.
Well, that's it, isn't it?
And load up. But, it wasn't that easy for us. So I was in the 90s. Interest rates, when I bought my first place was like 14%. It was 3 times, sort of what it has been on average over the last 3 years. I didn't have a great job, but I worked a second job, to pay it off. So the opportunity's there. I don't like hearing about all this, we've got to provide for. I go, why don't we have a more entrepreneurial society, gets out there, right, gets working, gets productive, and our property is the best property in the world.
Agreed.
Where do people go wrong at? I'm really curious to know what you're seeing across multiple businesses and the economy. Where are people going wrong?
Yeah, okay. So the place right now, and the one area that I'm really interested in, I spent yesterday morning with a really well-known liquidator. I go, tell me what's going on. Tell me the reasons why businesses are going broke right now. What's the common reason? Again, form of black book information. Tell me why they're going broke. He said, fundamentally, the labour rate has followed up. Do you know what I mean? And people have gone, look, I've just got to pay more for my staff, and then their margins have declined. And then so what's going wrong here is that we've sort of become, in some ways, the easy step up was just to simply just keep on making higher costs of living or costs of labour in our businesses, taking away the margin. Then there's a sales decline, and then they've got chopped there in the centre, and that's what's sending most businesses right now into liquidation. So where'd that come from? Mate, it came from that. It came actually from the COVID work from home revolution. It came from guys saying, look, I don't want to work as hard. I got used to this. I like doing my Pilates on a Wednesday. I'm going surfing on Thursday, but I still expect to keep my job. We've got to be really careful here because we need a strong and an active labour market in Australia, but we need our businesses to actually not go broke, because otherwise, like I said, we will start then going to a higher unemployment rate, and that is not good for the economy. So I think where most people are going wrong, mate, is they're not doing their cost, volume, profit stuff. And I keep coming back to that. The numbers will tell you the answers, right? They will tell you exactly where you stand. And so if you rebuild that and go make your decisions based on what impact will this have to me, rather than, like I said, as drunken sailors just going, oh, cool, we're doing all right, sure. Do you know what I mean? We just got told by a property manager that if he or she doesn't, go up to $140,000 that we used to pay them $100, that they'll leave or they'll go to a competitor. Well, we had to actually change our businesses at that time and go stop following it up, because eventually, if there is a change of revenue, that's actually going to crunch the business, and it's going to crunch the owners as well. So I think that's the biggest issue, is not understanding the labour coefficient. I also too, I'm a junkie for AI right now, and how that can actually really improve the costs of running your business and the parts for the replace. If you're not onto it, get onto it, because all your competitors are. And then also too, of course, the outsourcing market, that labour rate. It's been the history of most businesses that actually fail them, is they don't have that coefficient understood between labour and where the revenue lies.
Would you say, Ant, that it's a good time to get into business?
Yeah, I do, mate. I think this is a fantastic time. Like the bottom line with Australia, when I watch around it and I see all the things that are going on, is we have real interest around the world right now. Everyone's looking down here going, man, their dollar is really low. They seem to have really good growth rates as a country. We've got 25 million people in Australia on the same land mass as America has 350 million. Right? So the opportunities here are really, really high. Our property market is probably the most undervalued market in the world. So, yeah, to go into business right now, it was a lot easier to go in like now than it was for me when I went out by myself in 1997. As I said, interest rates are lower. The opportunities there to differentiate higher. Information, sort of is everywhere. We couldn't get it back then. You just had, sometimes too, the gut feel wasn't real time. It used to take a week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks to make a decision. Now it can be made in an hour. And so, yeah, like I said, if I was restarting again right now, I'd go, but I'd pick my industry. When you say you're going to put energy and effort into something, I'd pick the right place to put it into.
On that's a good segue to the boats.
Yeah.
There's a couple of nice fun toys in there, and these are just, I guess this falls into recreational, this falls into goals, falls into business. So you've sort of umbrellaed all of that into what you're doing, which I love. So tell us about the boats, because obviously they are businesses.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they wash their own face and some.
Yeah.
But talking about going into the right businesses, knowing what where you should go into and where you should apply your energy and your time. Tell us about that, because you've obviously got this. You're heavy into property, you've got the boats, plane, I think it might be in there somewhere. Tell us a little bit about that, for the listeners, because you've diversified a bit. How do you manage it?
Okay, so as a kid, I was water skiing by the time I was 5 or 6 years old behind my uncle's ski boat. Loved it. It was just a passion project. In all the way through, used to row my mum up and down Lane Cove River on an inflatable boat. I was mad. That's my happy place on the water. And then through it, get your first own boat, tinny, and you get onto a fiberglass boat. And I got to the point where I was looking at an okay boat, and the only day of a week I could use it was a Sunday. Okay, so no matter, I was working pretty much, sort of 5 days a week. I was playing rugby union down at Randwick on my Saturdays. So Sunday would be the reco day. And I started I'm looking around going, imagine if I could get this boat working for me on the days I can't use it. It's just sitting there doing nothing. So how do I get it working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Did a bit of study into it. Found out that from the tax officer's point of view, and also too from a insurance point of view, that you needed to have a boat in survey. I think, right, let's go and look at the charter model. And there was all these white fishing boats up and down Sydney Harbour. Go out, get a whole group of mates on, couple of cases of beer and see if you can catch a fish, but they weren't paying that much. And they'll go, no, they don't look like they're doing any good. And mate, I haven't got the patience for fishing, so that's out. And I thought, I know what to do here. I'm going to go and double down. I'm going to buy a super yacht looking thing, like a James Bond looking boat. I'm going to up the rates per hour like you've never seen them. When competitors are going out for $300 an hour, I'm going to go out at $4,000 an hour. But I'm going to provide something that the person who charters it goes out and feels like it's their boat for that 4 hours. They take 40 or 50 of their friends. They've got super yacht looking standards all through the boat, immaculately dressed staff, something like being in the Mediterranean. Anyway, and that's where the Ghost One model came from. And we started that in 2009, and it quickly became used. The boat was being used every day. I still, sort of was using it myself on weekends when I could, but I knew I was going to be here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So it was a business model. I go, I'm driving this. Everyone told me I couldn't do it. But the reason why they thought it couldn't be done is because the asset that they were trying to sell was just a fishing boat, white fishing boats on Sydney Harbour. I painted it black and silver, so I differentiated the whole set. And we had queues of people trying to get on the boat, so much so that the function sizes went from, it was a license to carry 40 people. People started saying, I want to charter the boat again, but I've got 60 people now in my business, what am I going to do? And they were flipping off to, some other boats. We didn't have something, so I went and built another boat up in Dubai for 120 people, and it became Ghost 2. Then that just hit the mark. So we're the number one sort of chartering boat in Australasia right now.
Wow.
But we build the experience, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yep.
And, they're not cheap. They're certainly, it's not just an easy set, but the experience is so memorable that long after the price is forgotten for the day out on the boat, the quality and the memories are left forever. So we build, it's the experiential business. And then I started going, well, okay, the same people that are chartering boats, they're also too chartering planes and they're chartering helicopters. So I said, well, we better go get one of those as well. And then it was, again, simply the same people who use it. We then filled the order book of people and provided them with something that they're otherwise using themselves. Then we've just done Ghost 3 in the Med, which is the biggest boat, and that's a cracker, a whole lot, but it's all been cash flow generated from that first boat.
Wow.
And then we just done Ghost Estate in Noosa, which is it's like a 6-bedroom on the, sort of same thing, bit like a boat that doesn't move. Got all the toys, jet skis and everything, and we do the experiential thing. So we sell experiences, I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yep.
And I try and find, to win on boats, you have to be different to every other asset class that's there.
Absolutely.
Although, since we did the Ghost business, it's become popular now, there's competitors everywhere, but we don't mind it. It keeps us sharp.
Yeah, absolutely. And outside of the it's commercial, but it's fun. I guess where would you look in terms of opportunities for yourself? Are you big in buying businesses? Do you like buying cash flow? I know you're heavy into real estate. What are some other areas and highlight spots that you could advise the listeners?
Yeah, so I think the thing right now is private equity. Small, and it's just small cap private equity. Opportunities are everywhere. They're walking deals. So we've got a little business called Bell Capital, which is now a big business. And it's me partnering with people who are looking, do you know what I mean, sort of to open up, or they've got some business problems and they need a partner to get them out of a hole. So we'll come in and we'll say, we'll put our money where our mouth is, and we'll buy into you. But we'll also to give you a thing or two we know about management and leadership. One of the great ones we did is just a small business, but it was a great idea. Again, met a guy who was an outstanding res sales guy up in Noosa. He was helping me buy the house up there. And I remember all the way through the transaction, everything he did was perfect. His product knowledge was great. His appearance was fantastic. His reach and knowledge was unbelievable. And I remember all the way while he's showing me houses, I was going, mate, you should be a residential real estate agent, principal of your own firm. And he was so good that at the end of the process, I bought a house. It wasn't one of the houses that he was listing, and he was such a good guy about it. The other agent, I don't think, dealt him in for much of a commission split because I was his buyer, but he didn't get a big score on that one, but he was more interested in delivering to me. I just went up to him and I said, are you a partner where you are? And he goes, no, I know how to sell. I said, have you ever thought of being your own business? And he goes, look, I have, but I don't really know that much about running the businesses. I can sell really well, but the rest, I said, I know a thing or two about how to run a real estate agency. So we literally, over a cafe, did a business plan, wrote it. It was on the relationships, Josh, so it wasn't a big DD thing. I just knew he'd be great. And we started Reed & Co. Up there, which is now the number 2 real estate agent in Noosa. I also too wanted to prove that I knew how to run a real estate agent.
They're good operators.
We act for hundreds of them, so I thought, might as well, you know what I mean? We started at number 47 in the town, and 2 years later we went strong in digital, high tech and high touch.
Yep.
Beautiful branding. We attracted people on the model. We changed the whole model of the way the resort town of Noosa was there, and it's now the number 2 business in Noosa.
Wow.
And that was a small private equity investment at the time. But again, it was what I was saying before. You don't always have to borrow and buy big. If you use your IP and knowledge, that's just as valuable as a bank or bank interest, and throw that into that to get a return.
Are you big on, we're obviously Dan, myself and Kev, we're going to embark on something with yourself. So are you big on partnerships coming together? Obviously there's going to be like a skill swap, there can be an equity swap. What are some of the key things, I guess, that people, like the podcast I did with Dan recently, I talked about, people going to JVs and developments, like in terms of construction, 8 times out of 10 actually goes wrong. Like I say, it just ends in tears. You probably say the same thing.
It's an actual thing. People just go, I'm going to development and construction until I'm a developer or in construction.
Exactly. So I guess, and so to my view, and, Sam and I, the sole owners, I think you're the sole director here still, since 1997. But now, obviously, opportunities arise where I think you've got to really assess it for what it is, who brings what to the table, and you sort of just trust your gut. You do an assessment. But where can people go wrong in terms of, I guess, partnering too quick, and what should people look out for? Like, obviously, you've got a lot of acumen behind you to sit there and go, right, I'm going to write this business plan on a napkin. And I know the brand, it's a phenomenal brand that you guys have built. It's really good. The videographer actually hit me on Instagram a couple of days ago.
Cool.
Just by way of chat. Kudos on that. But where should people, I guess, because where I see a lot of people go wrong, I guess, is too big, too quick, wanting to, maybe they're partnering up with the wrong people, they don't know the right questions to ask. How do people navigate that in terms of like trying to insulate that process and make sure it doesn't end up in tears quicker than it ends up in glory? Like, where do they start?
So number one is identifying the gap in the market, and finding opportunity, and then looking really carefully at that point point of difference. Not that variable to what I was mentioning with the boats. I go, okay, there's a gap in the market. There's no luxury charter boats. There's thousands of fishing boats, but no luxury charter boat. What about the people like me who don't want to go fishing? So first point then too, when you're writing your vision statement and your plan, is you're really becoming a junkie about the industry you're going into. You're learning everything about it. Okay? You're learning what makes it work. I generally say look for the best performers straight away and have a good crack at them. The information is readily available in any local market area. You can find out who are the best operators and then find out how they're going. What are the things that work for them? And I go, great. Then you start to work out how long will it take to get to, if marquee level is where you want to be and you're coming at the bottom, what's the quickest, fastest way? At Reed & Co, we set a blistering target, you know what I mean, sort of to be on it. We were recruiting within a month of doing it. We had, and then we had the points of difference, which I think to any business operator, go, what is your differentiating factors? They're going to attract a customer to you that is going to be non-attracted to a traditional offering, and they're going to see you and go, wow, I want to get on with that. So finding out what those parts are is just as important as actually, the financial side of it. So then I build all the models around it. So you start building the plan around it, and stress test it, cross test it, triple test it, and go, right, cool. You then start talking about what the people power you're going to need, where we're going to get them from. Can the principals actually pull it all off? If they can, great, because it's the cheapest form of labour is people who are the shareholders in the business. And they'll generally fight for something and they'll work harder than 10 hired help. You know what I mean? If you're in equity in something, you will stay back till 7, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night to make it successful. But then we go to what is that people power part to leverage margin on the business. So my opening feel when someone brings me a business plan, I go, right, let's go to the complaint section straight away. Let's go to all the things that can possibly go wrong here. Rather than talking about the things that can go right, I go, let's go to what's going to blow this up, right? And let's talk about the plan to properly have countermeasures and defences for everything that can go wrong. Then I go, right, we've nailed that. Now we want to know, we're in business to do well, right? And that's the first thing. If someone's in business just to go, I just want an occupation, I said, don't get in business, go work for somebody else, right? We're in business to do well. So the rewards have to be readily identifiable before you even start building a P&L around it. You go, right, the rewards are going to be good here. They're not going to bring more stress to my life. They're actually going to add fun to the life. They're going to give me better lifestyle. They're going to help me put my kids in better school. Okay, that's the sort of stuff that drives an owner, do you know what I mean, sort of on that. And then getting down to the clunk of the business, making right down to the things in the business, like right down deep to every minute point, the A to Z of what it takes to set it, and then set a wildly fast accelerated model, to get there really quickly. And if for some reason you get into it and for whatever reason all the analysis didn't give you a fair call on it, kill it straight away and get out of it. Right? The biggest thing I see is people persisting long in a broken down model. It's a great old saying, particularly about broken business, you can't fix a broken wagon wheel, but what you can do is then pull it back apart and build a new wheel from the sum of the pieces. So that's what, sort of is the part in operating the business. And sometimes that's just part of the evolution, guys, where you're just constantly going, great, what worked for us in 2025 is now off in 2027, and we have to reinvent and get fast on that, take the base of the business and keep evolving it. Your competitors will follow you, but they'll never outpace you because, like I said, the innovation guys are the ones who always make the most money.
Oof, strong. Yeah. It's powerful.
What would be your best piece of advice you'd give to your 30-year-old self?
Yeah, cool. I'd probably go back and go, all the things you thought were going to come true, okay? All the things you were worried about were going to come true will come true. But I'd also say, to a certain extent, over half the things that I used to, the biggest thing that, sort of when I kicked off in business, and I remember reading Sam Walton's book, Made in America, the story of Walmart. And it was this long book about, how, and I think the opening paragraph said, depending on how quickly you read, we will have opened 3 Walmart mega stores by the time you finish the book. Right? I'm going, man, that's a business, right? They're at it. And I got right to the end of it, Dan, and it said, really interestingly, it said, basically now I'm an old man. He's dead now, but it said, I'm an old man. Over half the things I worried about in my business never came true. Okay, so it said, in fact, it said, don't put up umbrellas until it starts raining. And that's probably advice I would give to myself. I used to be nervous on everything. I still watch our numbers, on a daily basis because back then we were fighting for survival. We bit off so much more than Jack, I think, sort of my PA used to just look at me and go, wow, I can't believe he's gone and done this. And there were times when I remember one specific time we it was in the 90s and we were struggling with cash flow. We had about 5 or 6 staff, and I remember going to my mum and I said, Mum, I know I've said to you, I used to go and see Mum every Saturday morning no matter what, and they said, I know I've told you a lot of times we're going to go broke, but I think it's actually going to happen this month. And Jack was sort of running everything. She was a minister of everything, and she goes, we pulled on credit cards, we pulled on everything. We had to pay wage on Thursday, and it was a Tuesday, and Jack goes, we're not going to make it. And it's that low tangible sign when you have to go to the staff and say, guys, sorry, I can't pay you. And it's never happened before this, and it's never happened after it. And I was starting to go, what's stuffed? And I remember, it was Wednesday, and then I remember Jacqueline going, get on the phone at 4:30, there's a job and they want it done tonight, and they want the whole thing, and they're paying cash tonight for a job to be done. I go, you're kidding me? And it was this moment where I go, and we needed $4,000 to make the wages run. And it was actually Spotless Catering, and it was a last minute job for a due diligence on an acquisition they were doing. And I remember it was a highlight of my part because I was actually contemplating, how am I going to tell the staff we can't pay him? And I remember he just goes, look, I just need a quote now. I was doing a stock take, do you know what I mean, for a midnight acquisition. Can you do it? We got it done. And I remember it was the most embarrassing part. He said, how much are you guys going to charge for this? It sounds like you've got capability to do it. And we didn't, by the way. We had to send someone up to Brisbane on a plane and stuff like that. I had to get a mate from uni to do the Adelaide part of it. And I remember just being asphyxiated on the $4,000 that we had to pay. And he goes, what's your quote? I just need a quote. And if it's within line of our budget, you're going to get approved, you're going to get the job. And I remember just going on the phone, $4,000. That was the number. And he goes, right, okay, well, you've got the job. He said, we're actually going to pay you $15,000 because the next lowest quote was $25,000.
Oh, no.
But that was those moments, right? And I'd probably say, I remember them like they were yesterday. And I still run the business like that today.
You can tell.
I don't take anything for granted. You're watching everything. Competitors are everywhere around us, and so that makes us healthy. It makes us get better. But I probably tell myself, probably that Sam Walton thing about the worrying side. It's sort of the way you've got to have a fair degree of it because that causes you to go really well, but not to the extent where it overly consumes you. And go great. In the whole scheme of things, it still works out okay.
What was the routine like when you were coming up in the trenches? Because it's interesting to hear a lot of different people's routines that are successful. I'd love to hear yours and how that's evolved.
Yeah. So big diary management was my biggest part. Controlling my outcomes and being available to see people. So, and it's still, funnily enough, all these years later, I still run the same diary. Mondays is Bell Partners Day. That's the day I get together with my teams. Everyone comes together for a Monday morning meeting. I generally run it. Goes around nationally, and then everyone breaks into teams to talk about exactly that. The agenda of the day is what went right last week, what went wrong last week, how do we recover if we're behind this week, or how do we keep doing it. Our training sets up any issues to do with our business on a Monday. It's a great day of the week to do it, okay? Come in on the set. Tuesday I go to work, and I'll see people, of course, on Monday. If a job comes up and someone wants to come and see me, we can break the cycle. But Jack runs the diary really sensibly. Tuesday I'll go back to back from 7 in the morning till about 7 at night. It's client day. Any client that wants to see me, they get me all the way through. Yeah, I try to do. Still down there. Yeah. My first Zoom this morning was like at 6 o'clock. I'm comfortable with that. I love it. So it doesn't bother me too much. And then we go all the way. And on Wednesday, we try and keep the diary open for doing the work, moving on, closing whatever happened on Tuesday, and leaving bumps in the road. If something's come up and you've got to get some work done, you need room to be able to do it. Thursday I repeat it. I go hardcore again, 7 in the morning till 7 at night. But that goes outside that. Sometimes it's inside that. And then Friday again too is your catch-up day. It's your close day of the week and stuff like that. So I run that. And then the other part is being really variable as well. So, you guys saw we were halfway through the podcast. Like, I've got a really, really good 25-year client. He's in, they're working in the strategy team. I just wanted to make sure I shook their hand and walked them back in the firm and made sure the relationship was okay. And I just said to you guys, can I get 3 or 4 minutes off to, we'll take a break? And you guys go, yeah, no worries. We'll take a quick break. So making sure you're flexible around the small, tiny things that don't really matter to, what you're doing at the time, but do matter to somebody else. Who's going to walk out of you and go, wow, Hank just came and said g'day. I haven't seen him for a couple of months, and he just welcomed us into the place. So being really flexible and agile, sort of around and not being so rigid. Go, no, that's my diary and I'm not breaking it. No, hang on, break it. Right, work out what the outcome is.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that. And can I build on Dan's point? Structure around, it's the B word, balance, which I don't know if it exists. I think you're always going to be in one and out one. I think anyone that's super successful has always got to sacrifice something. On the big come up, 1997, started the business to now, and obviously super regimented, super successful. How has that, I guess, quote unquote, that balance been able to manage? You've got a couple of daughters, did you say? Got a couple of kids, and obviously just growing such an expanding business and so many different entities. How have you found time to balance being a dad and a husband and all the stuff? Because a lot of people that are listening, that's really where they fall apart, is they chase one too hard, they drop one, but I'm guilty of it. Yeah. So what are some tips and tricks and advice you give to listeners around managing that?
Yeah, so the first thing is outcomes, right? I'm into the outcomes game, not ours. So anything I try and do is high quality, okay? And that might be, I'd rather, 3 hours of really high quality with the kids than having 6 hours with them where they're just in the pool and swimming around and I'm doing emails or something like that. So I look for the outcomes of quality on everything I can get, and I'll take a high quality output and then I'll park, so the low stages, sort of in that set as well. I'm lucky that my partner is also a highly engaged business person, so anytime I'm doing work, she just opens the laptop and she starts as well, and it's likewise for the two of us. So we make sure that we set aside great time for each other. I think part of it, there's no perfect sort of setup. We go, and I saw a rugby league coach recently came out and said, this is my family time between 5 and 8 o'clock, right? And I was really interested to see how that model could possibly work. To me, it didn't make any sense at all because it didn't have the flexibility of being an NRL coach. Between 5 and 8 o'clock is probably when your players want to speak to you. They've got something wrong in their life, they're going to want to speak to you. And so I was really interested to see, can that manage? Are you able to do that? And that might be family time or kids time. But what I do as well, Josh, if I nick from some time, I give it back from another one. So that's what I try and find, particularly with the girls. They won't let me go too far with them. Without, if I'm on my phone, I go, Dad, I go, yeah, okay, cool, guys. And I bring him into it. But I also try and say to them as well, sort of when I'm at that, I go, guys, I want you guys to have a work ethic, okay? This is going to be a tougher life than you think it's going to be for you because of all the reasons we've talked about. Cost of living, it's the cost of property. By the time, they're in buying age, 25 to 30 years old, a 2-bedroom unit in Sydney is going to cost like $4.5 million. So I want them to get a work ethic and follow that so they don't think anything's for free. So I guess I take the view that, when they see me working hard, there is some value added benefit for them. It's not just gone. But the biggest thing I do with it, every time I can make up time with the girls, like this morning I was on the phone to them. I'm down in Sydney there and up in Queensland, on the phone to both of them, just having I had a bit of free time. I finished the Zoom early, got on the phone, we had a bit of fun for the day, set some plans for the weekend. And so you make sure it's sort of a borrow, steal, get it back and do that, mate, as well. Yeah.
That is just brilliant advice. Yeah, I think nick a bit, give it back. I think that's really, because a lot of time, look, and a lot of business people I speak to and just agents in general just get the guilt. They get the mum guilt and then they get the professional guilt. It's like, oh, fuck, I'm doing too much over here, too much over there. Yeah. But I think for the listeners, just look, if you nick it, pay it back. You can borrow it from the time bank, chuck it back in. Good debt, bad debt.
And you're kind of always trying to find time to borrow it back. So any time I go, wow, I've got a free, thing. Or the kids I've got them into surfing up there. Like I said, it's funny. I taught them how to surf up in Noosa, and they said, Dad, when are you going to surf with us? And I said, you guys, as soon as you don't need me anymore to put you on the waves and you can paddle yourself away, that'll be when I'll surf with you. And I remember they both got really proficient, a lot faster than I thought they would. And Thea's into me going, Dad, so we're going surfing this weekend. Now we can both do it. I go, cool. I went up the day. I hadn't had a surf for like 10 years. I didn't want to look like a bad dad in front of them because they think that I can fly. And, mate, I did about 5 nosedives, like cracked it and stuff like that. By the time I got down to surf with him, I was going, but I was so nervous that the girls were going, Dad, we thought you were some sort of surfing legend and we're better than you are. So, yeah, it's that time, mate, do you know what I mean, and doing it and making sure we just have fun and laugh on it. But I try and talk to them about financial literacy a lot.
Yep.
I know they're going, oh, well, they'll put them to sleep at night time, and I guess in some ways it does. But everything I do, like I'll say to Thea or Charlie, guys, right, we've had brekkie. You guys, right, get the bill, check it, pay it, right? Here's Dad's credit card, right? Have you checked it, right? And I used to, I mean, it's little things we used to do, and Mum taught me when I was young, goes, I never ever question a bill before I get it. I just go, this is probably going to be $80. You know, we've all had the coffee, we've all had something to eat. It'll be 80, and as soon as it comes back at 80, that's my thing. I go, great, pay it. If it comes back at $400, that's when you go, right, I'll have a look. So the girls are into that now too, and they pick that up off us as well. And mate, we do it here. You know, when we're procuring, you know, large investment stuff, we do it on the exact same basis. What should this be? You pre-think what it should be, and if it comes in about that, you move fast and move on, and you only question stuff that is outside those boundaries.
It's how you do one thing, it's how you do everything, right? And I love the example that you set for your kids, mate. That's unreal.
Yeah, cool, mate.
Mate, my last question for you is, when it's time to hang up the boots, what do you wish your dad would say about you?
I think, like I said, it's a good question. I think always the counter question always says, what will the headstone say when it's over? And I love it to say, here lies a loyal guy, right, who even in tough times jumped right in. And here lies a person who is, you know, sort of his proudest boast was the goodness of his heart. And I think if we can get to that, it's not perfect, mate, but I try and think about the way that we live our lives. Mum taught me when I was a kid, never touch a dishonest dollar. To this day of my age, I've never stolen anything, I've never nicked anything, I've never taken anything that wasn't mine. But the biggest thing that differentiates what I like to think is on, you know, for the firm and our values there is that we're very loyal. We pick and we stick. Loyalty does go both ways, right? I mean, there's been some times that we've actually put everything behind someone and we've been let down. That happens, right? But I'd like to think the vast majority of the ones we pick and we've jumped onto it and we just stick and we grind away and we never ever give up, you know what I mean, on making sure we get our clients through and get them to where they want to be.
Beautiful. Do you have any last questions, Josh?
Mate, no, I just want to say thank you. That was absolutely brilliant. I
enjoyed it too, boys.
I took a lot away from it, and I'm sure the listeners will as well.
And I just wanted to say thanks to Wingman, who supported us in the podcast to get us here, to be able to interview people like yourself and provide this too.
Yeah, they're an amazing business, those guys. Yeah. Johnny Bell up there, he's doing a great job. And like I said, again, what they're doing offshore is smart. You know, it's a new answer when guys are really constricted by some of the local labour. You know, not just the labour rates they're asking for, but what the deliverables are. To have a solution against that's a great thing.
Beautiful. I'll probably just say at the end, I'll say for listeners, listen back to that one twice, because I think you'll uncover a lot of gold in that one. That was truly great.
Thank you, mate.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, mate.
Hey, brilliant.
Easy, guys.